Next, I would like to present the annual Asian Heritage Month lecture. I'd like to invite both the Honourable Dr. Vivienne Poy and Mr. Justin Poy to the stage. They will be telling a story behind Asian heritage in Canada. Here is It Was About Time.
So thank you very much for coming, everybody. I thought it would be kind of a good time to interview my mother, because a lot of people don't know the background and why we have Asian Heritage Month, and why, quite honestly, it took this long to have Asian Heritage Month. So if you look at histories of Asians in Canada, the South Asians had come in the probably the early 18th century to Vancouver. They went to BC for the lumber. The Chinese arrived, for the gold rush, and of course building our railway. So why do you think it took so long to establish Asian Heritage Month?
First of all, I have to correct Justin. The Chinese got here in 1788. The first group, in fact, there were a few groups of contract workers and shipwrights, and they helped to build the Northwest, the fort in Nootka Sound. So that was the first arrival. Why does it take so long? I actually don't know. I know that when I got to the Senate, there were already MPs in Parliament, but nobody has done anything. So, it's better late than never. So I did it. Well, I tabled it and I spoke on it, and various other senators also made speeches, and I had, obviously, a majority support in the Senate, so it passed before the Christmas break, 2001, actually. So according to the Senate, this is the 22nd year. Senate always keep our own date, aside from the government, the federal government. Anyway, so what was your second question? Sorry.
Well, I'm going to ask,
yeah.
It's been 21 years. Has
Yes.
Asian Heritage Month evolved the way you thought it would?
I think Asian Heritage Month celebrations has evolved much greater than what I expected. I didn't quite know what would happen. I just did my part. And now, the important thing too, yes, I want to go back a little bit. So when we returned to, when the Senate recessed, that we passed the motion. So the following winter, when Senate resumed, I realized that there was even harder work in front of me, because I had to work with the minister, Sheila Cobbs, Minister of Canadian Heritage, and her department. Now, Minister Sheila Cobbs by then has become a good friend. I believe in making friends so that your life is a lot easier. So I make friends everywhere. But her department was a little more difficult, because my staff was checking and realized that Asian Canadians were not part of Canadian heritage. It was that bad. And we really need to be on that website. We need to be part of the program. And I have to really give the credit to my staff. They were constantly after Canadian heritage to get that done. So of course now it's history, because it is always announced, and Asian Canadians and Asian Heritage Month programs are always on the website. And of course, since 2002, the federal government started celebrating Asian Heritage Month. The first one, we signed the declaration, and ever since, every year, it is celebrated by the federal government.
So are you happy with where we've landed 21 years later?
Well, we are bigger than what I ever expected. I just know that everybody was happy. What I did was really I planted a seed, and and I did my best to fertilize that seed, but if the seed is not planted on fertile ground, that would not have happened. But it just showed how much needed this month is for Canadians of Asian heritage. Everybody was so happy. I mean, they adopted me right across the country, and everybody came out to celebrate. So, the timing was absolutely perfect. Well, I thought it's better late than never.
So in this country, we celebrate diversity, but we also strive for inclusion. How does Asian Heritage Month accomplish both?
Asian Heritage Month not only celebrates our contribution to Canada, we celebrate in the arts, in culture, in academics, in everywhere, but we believe in inclusion. Not only do all Asians celebrate, I always encourage everyone to celebrate with mainstream. So invite your friends, connect with every organization in the mainstream, and celebrate together. We need to make friends.
During the pandemic, anti-Asian sentiment was proliferated. Did that surprise you?
No, it does not, because Canada is a colony. Canada it's a remnant of the British imperialism. So Britain had started it, and even though it has, I would say in the UK, it has sort of the colonialism part is sort of gradually going down. However, in the former colonies, it's a residual of the policy of colonialism. And so it's systemic, and by making friends and celebrating together, learning about each other's culture and background and foods and music, we make friends, and hopefully one day that will go away.
So an ugly part of our history here in Canada is the fact that 100 years ago, in 1923, the Exclusion Act was passed, and at the time it was billed by the Prime Minister as a way to protect Canadian workers and whatnot. But what's the real truth behind the Exclusion Act?
Yes, it was fear of competition, because in the speeches in the House of Commons, it was very apparent that the Chinese, first of all, before Chinese exclusion, it was the head tax. Head tax was not did not start until after the railroad was finished, because the Prime Minister said, "We need the Chinese workers. Do you want the railroad, or that if you want the railroad to be finished, we need the Chinese workers?" So the railroad had to be finished, the Cross-Canada Railroad, before that law was passed with the first Chinese head tax. And in the picture of the last spike, you will notice that no Chinese worker was in that painting.
Yes, in the staged photo. And then
No, Canadian.
Yes, but
Canadian
there's the real
photo.
photo which shows Chinese workers.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, there's the head tax, the Exclusion Act, a lot of negative forces going against the Chinese here in Canada, but yet they continue to thrive and grow and become successful. To what do you account for that?
Well, Asians are very hardy, and we all know that. Certainly, I would say not just Asians, but immigrants. These are immigrants who come and they work really hard. And even today, it's the same. it doesn't matter what part of the world they come from, and I've noticed that they work much harder than those who are born in Canada, because I think Canadians are very spoiled today. And so also it's in the cultural sense, in our heritage, the importance of education. So we make sure, I mean, the parents, I've known parents who take 3 jobs to put their children through school, make sure they're well educated. So, you know, and unfortunately, also they're always taught to work hard, get educated, and work and keep your heads down, and don't speak up. So we have survived all these years, but it's time to speak up.
And so what advice would you give to young parents of Asian Canadians in how they balance their Asian identity with their Canadian identity? Because I mean, I've seen there's many young Asians in Canada who struggle with that. What advice would you give to them?
Well, I have always done that with our children, like Justin, because whenever I speak to young people, and I do that all the time, I always tell them the Canadians first, but be proud of your heritage. Because if you're not proud of your heritage, you can't move on with life. You've got a chip on your shoulder. So you need to be proud of your heritage so that you have confidence to move forward. And this is what I say all the time. I think I've done a good job with you guys, right?
And before we end this, I wanted to know, what is your hope for Asian Heritage Month in the future?
In the future, and I may not live that long to see it, but what I would like to see is not only the celebration of Asian Heritage Month, but we all celebrate together. Now, so in May, all people from Asian Heritage celebrate and include everybody, and then we'll celebrate with all the other Canadians from different backgrounds and do their celebration as well. We're not doing enough of that, and we need to do it. Then, you know, Canada would be a great country because it would be the leader in the world. Because Canada, actually, if you look at our population, Canada is the world. The world is here in Canada.
Well, can't top that with another question. Thank you. Thank you.